documentary just dropped on Netflix. It's called Filthy Rich. Perfect title. Here's Epstein in a deposition that no one's ever seen before.
Mr. Epstein, how long have you been sexually attracted to underage minor females?
Objection, harassing, argumentative. Are you kidding?
Were you sexually abused as a minor?
You know, I'd like to respond to all your, if any questions seem to be relevant, but I would like to respond to any relevant question at this time. However, my attorneys have counseled me that I cannot provide answers to the questions relevant to this lawsuit today. I must accept their advice or risk losing my Sixth Amendment right to effective representation. Accordingly, then, I assert my Fifth, Sixth, and 14th Amendment right to the United States Constitution.
One of the guys who deposed Epstein, probably more than anybody, Bradley Edwards. Edwards came face to face a number of times with the pedophile in and out of the courtroom. His relentless pursuit of Epstein finally put the billionaire behind bars in New York. And his book, Relentless Pursuit, My Fight for the Victims of Jeffrey Epstein, probably the best book that I've ever read on the subject, and he joins me now. You saw this guy face to face. You interviewed him. You spoke to him, even in Starbucks, trying to hash out your legal differences. What did you gather from this guy?
He was a master manipulator and extraordinarily charismatic. Had no conscience whatsoever, but would constantly try to make you think otherwise and ingratiate himself with anyone. And he was very disarming and used every different weapon he possibly could to gain an advantage. The deposition clip you just shows one side of him, but at the Starbucks he was a totally different person trying to be my best friend. So really a master manipulator, which is how he accumulated so many victims.
So, complete narcissist. You mentioned that he's basically running a sexual Ponzi scheme. I mean, he's like the Bernie Madoff of child molestation. And he used this psychological warfare to gain any advantage. And I guess if you have $1 billion, you can just kind of throw any sort of weapon out there. And he was very vicious in the way he attacked people attacking him. He used private investigators, used threats of violence, and just carpet bombed you into submission. But you didn't let that happen. Because of what you did on behalf of these victims, Southern District of New York was able to pick him up, and then he went behind bars, and then we all know the rest. One of the things that came out in the documentary, they interviewed a guy that worked on Pedophile Island, and he fingered a prince and a president. Watch this.
I saw Bill Clinton sitting with Jeffrey on the living room porch area, which was Jeffrey's favorite spot. I saw no other guests there at that time at all. I just said, hey, wow, Jeffrey sitting with Bill Clinton. It's probably around 2004. I saw Prince Andrew. He was at the pool. He was with, at that time, an unknown girl to me. She was young. She didn't have any top on. They were engaged in foreplay.
All right, so we all know the Prince Andrew situation. That's just horrific. We're not accusing Bill Clinton of anything. He's managed to kind of float above this thing, although he didn't tell the truth about how many times he's been on Jeffrey's private plane. And now, he said he's never been to this island, although now we have someone that says he was at the island. Do you see any shoe dropping on the former president, or do you think he's able to kind of rise and skate above it?
Well, I would just say it this way. In all of the victims and survivors that we interviewed and know about, and there are many, none have ever accused him of wrongdoing. But what we do know is that he was in Jeffrey Epstein's presence, and even more so in Ghislaine Maxwell's presence, many, many times on numerous occasions, including on occasions when others who were victimized by Jeffrey Epstein were there. He has a lot of information. We've invited him to speak to us. If you're going to do what you should do, then sit down, talk to us, and tell us everything that you know. The fact that he's been less than helpful is troubling to me, who has only been trying to fight for the victims and survivors and get real answers from people who are willing to tell us, and he just hasn't been one of those people, which is extraordinarily frustrating and disappointing.
Well, I think that tells you a lot. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but I think might be able to read between the lines there. One of the things that is probably the most corrupt of all of this is this deal that they cut with the Department of Justice, where they hid all of these crimes, slapped a prostitution misdemeanor on it, and then wouldn't let any of the victims know that the Epstein people cut this deal with the federal government. It's atrocious. Never been done before in the history of the Department of Justice. Do you still know why he got this sweetheart deal, and the government still won't tell us the truth about it?
I don't completely know the why. By the time I was brought into this, it was Courtney Wild who came to me, and I promised to get to the bottom of it. If it was not for the lawsuit that we filed against the U.S. government, nobody would know anything about this deal. So it's only the lawsuit that we filed that uncovered the fact that there was a secret deal that was constructed between the government and Jeffrey Epstein and his lawyers that were doing his bidding in total secrecy and privacy, and ultimately determined by a federal judge to have been a violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act, a violation of their rights, which is also troubling. More troubling, though, is we still, the people who did it still won't provide answers as to why they did it to the victims, which there's no good excuse for that.
We're going to continue to put pressure on Acosta because he still to this day has not explained why he let this pedophile slide the way he did. All right, Brad, thanks again. Coming up, anarchists at Antifa.